Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Geometry Concepts and Skills. It's Mr. Kramer here. We're going to talk today about the distance formula and what the distance formula is going to do for us. So with our formula here, here's what we got. The distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1. And actually, please make sure that you put a squared there too. All squared. I kind of forgot to add those into your notes, so please do that in right now. I want to talk about this formula first before we start actually plugging in some numbers and getting the ideas here. First and foremost, the thing most people get really concerned is, what is this whole x2, x1, y2, and y1 thing? All right, so let's take a look at an example of what we're doing with that. The x2, x1, the y2, and the y1 come from an ordered pair. An ordered pair, an example of an ordered pair would be something like 5, 2. Now, for every ordered pair, you have an x and y portion of it. So what I'm trying to say here is that 5 is the equivalent to x, and this 2 is the equivalent to a y. So what that means is that for each problem here, and if you kind of take a look at bottom here with like number 1, you see that you're given 2 points. Well, those 2 points are actually going to kind of create that x1, y1, and x2 and y2. Kind of like what you see right here. So if I'm going to problem number 1, first things first that I got to kind of note is that this 2, 5, this is your x1 and this is your y1. While this particular part for B is your x2 and your y2. Well, you might ask yourself, well, how do I know why aren't the other ones the 2s and why aren't these, the 1s? Meaning x2, x and y2 and versus x1, y1. We read left to right as Americans. So when we're starting, this is the first thing that we're reading. This is then what we see next. Should be the first point that you see, so that's why it's given all the 1s, meaning x1 and y1. This is the second point that we see, so that's why we're given it as the x2 into the y2. Now you're just simply taking these particular parts and plugging them into the respective spot within the formula. So what I'm trying to say is that we're going to have d equals the square root. We have x2 first. X2 is 6 minus your x1, which is 2, squared, plus y2, which is 8, minus y1, which is 5. See that I just plugged in those particular spots into their respected area of the formula. So whatever is x1, you're plugging into the spot where it says x1. Where you see y2, you're plugging your number for y2 into that respective spot. So this is the first step, just plugging everything in. The next thing that we have to do then, though, is we're going to be looking at order of operations. Please, excuse, my, dear, and Sally, or your PEMDAS. Why do we do that? Because you have to make sure that you're working this in the right progressions, the right order of operations. Because you can't just sit there and you can't just add or multiply or subtract whatever you want. You have to go in a particular order, and that's what we're going to work on here. So first and foremost, for your order of operations, it tells you that we need to do parentheses first. That's what the P stands for. So the first thing you want to do is you want to subtract 6 minus 2 and also 8 minus 5. So 6 minus 2, you're getting yourself 4. 4 squared. Keep that exponent there, plus 8 minus 5, or 3. That's then 3 squared. So that's what we got done first with our order of operations. Parentheses is over with. Let's now take a look at what's next. Or in this case, E stands for the exponents. So we're going to get each exponent first. I'm not going to add 4 plus 3 first. Instead, I'm doing 4 squared, or 16, and then I'm going to add that with 3 squared, or 9. So now that gets rid of that. Don't really have any multiplication here. Don't really have any division. So that's now leading us to our addition subtraction part. Now I can finally add 16 plus 9, giving me 25. Now what you're at is you're at the very, very last step. This is kind of like yesterday. I got the square root of 25 and the square root of 25. That's going to get me just 5. That's your answer. That's it. Listen, I know this seems like it's a lot of steps. It's really not that bad once you kind of get some practice and you get some adjustment to it. Make sure that you do follow this order of operations. And also, look at how I wrote everything out here. Everything here, I went through every single solitary step. Don't skip steps. Don't just move ahead or don't just move on. Make yourself organized here. There's a lot of different moving parts within this particular formula, so you want to make sure that you stay as organized as you possibly can, and that's best accomplished through writing everything down. Okay, let's take a look at another one here. Number 2. First and foremost, I got to identify what is my x1 and my y1 and my x2 and y2. Again, this is the first point they give you. That's your 1s. This is the second point they give you, your 2s. Now let's plug it all in. So I got d equals the square root of x2, which is -6. Then I got minus x1, which is 3, squared. Again, remember this part is squared. Plus y2, which is 8, minus y1, which is -2, squared. Now this first part, you should be able to take care of that. Again, if you need to, write out your order of operations, your PEMDAS. P stands for parentheses. We got to take care of that first. I got -6 minus 3. That's going to be -9. Don't necessarily worry about getting negatives. It's okay. I'll explain that in a little bit of what's going to happen with them. You're going to add that with 8 minus -2. Well, anytime you minus a negative, that becomes basically an addition problem. So really what you're looking at here is 8 plus 2. That's 10, or 10 squared. Now, after your parentheses portion, it's now time to do the exponents. This is where you need to be careful with your calculator. For some of your calculators, you got to watch how you plug in -9 squared. For some calculators, you will get it saying -81. That is not true. Remember, when you are squaring something, we're taking that number and we're multiplying it by itself. Well, a negative times a negative is going to be ultimately positive. So anytime you get a negative number and you're squaring it, it's always going to become positive, okay? So just be careful of that. I know some calculators you've got to actually plug in parentheses, -9, close parentheses, squared. So double check with what calculator you have. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say, though, is that -9 squared is positive 81. Again, any number squared that's a negative is always going to be positive. So I got 81 plus 10 squared, that's normal, that's 100. So like last time, we're done with our exponent parts. You're not going to need to multiply, you're not going to need to divide, we're just then looking at addition and subtraction. So next, got to add 81 and 100, or 181. All right, so very, very last, I then just need to get the square root of 181, and the square root of 181 we're going to be looking at when we round 13.5. Again, decimals are not a problem. Don't worry about them, but just please make sure that you round to the nearest 10th spot, meaning this dude right here. So if I get myself, let's say 13.5, excuse me, let's rewind. Let's say I get you something like 13.46. That's round. This guy is rounding that dude up, or 13.5. That's just an example. All right. So want to make sure that you then give these next two here a try on your own. Just remember, sorry, kind of forgot to make sure that I had that squared there, and that part of the formula squared right there. But again, give these two, numbers 3 and 4, a try on your own. Come back tomorrow in class with them done and prepared. And let's get some extra practice going then. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was good. And we'll see you come tomorrow. Again, make sure these are done and that you're ready. Have a good day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.